You are listening to WOSD. I'm your host, Layla Palmer, and thank you for joining us for Part 4 of the Evolution of COMMBUYS. In Part 1, we learned about the initial vision for the COMMBUYS project and the impact it had in its early stages. In Part 2, we learned how users across the state of Massachusetts adopted the platform. And in Part 3, Gary Lambert provided a look into the future of e-procurement. In this episode, we will learn how change management helped people adapt to the new system, and hear from some folks who provided training on COMMBUYS across the state of Massachusetts. First, we'll hear from Jeanette Grabner, change manager for the COMMBUYS project, who was instrumental in helping employees and users adapt to the new system.
So my main role was really to ensure that myself and my team, working with the COMMBUYS Commonwealth team, that we prepared not only the Commonwealth team who would own COMMBUYS, but also the users throughout the entire Commonwealth. So we had to prepare them in so many ways, but really the fact that they understood the value of it, the use of it, and it was really imperative that they would adopt it. What is change management? A lot of people assume that change management is, well, you bring someone in, they understand the system, or whatever the product may be, or whatever the new change might be, and they create training, and then all of a sudden, everybody's happy. Well, that's not how it works. With every organization, you have a culture. So when you bring in something as massive as COMMBUYS, not only is it changing within the Commonwealth staff, it changes across the whole state, if you will. So how do you do that? You begin by involving the people who are going to own the system. They have to have buy-in. They have to see the value of what the change is going to be and how that will affect their work environment. My team worked hand in hand with the Commonwealth COMMBUYS team, the vendor, everyone, and we would listen to what their concerns might be, what their fears might be with the system. Why are we changing? All of those questions. We would incorporate whatever the Commonwealth team said initially into our change management plan and our learning development plan. We would then go back, share what we had developed based on what they told us and what we knew of the system, and then we would listen again. We would take that information, we would see how they would react, and then we would go back to the drawing board, and until we had it right and we rolled it out, we did not say that we had finished our process. And that's how we did it.
Next, Jackie Needham will share her experience on the local government enablement team and share some insights about what the team did to implement COMMBUYS across the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts.
Right at the beginning of COMMBUYS, we started the local government enablement team. So Eric Murphy as our supervisor, and then Trish Burke, Jen Forsey, and myself, we divided the state up into different territories, and we would introduce COMMBUYS and assist them in implementing or adopting COMMBUYS for their city or town. And one of the first, the beta accounts with COMMBUYS was the city of Lawrence, which is my territory. I worked with the Chief Procurement Officer, Rita Bruchot, and we set up classes, and we actually trained 144 of the city's purchasers, and they would come into classrooms in an auditorium, I think, way back then, and we would have training come out, and we would teach everyone the steps of purchasing through COMMBUYS, putting in a requisition, transitioning it to a purchase order, and then sending it out to the vendor and having the goods or services arrive. I'd say the majority of the people that we trained had been in their positions for a long time, and they were used to purchasing the same old way they'd been doing for a long time. And then came along COMMBUYS, which was a different way of purchasing, a different way of going out and investigating the product that you want and then actually putting the purchase through. So they were apprehensive, but we would train people in large groups so that they were kind of in it together. Back then, we used to have them be approved to make one purchase, one small office product. We'd have the class for like 2 hours, and then at the end of the class, they got to use the punch out and make their own purchase that would arrive the next day in their offices, so they could see the benefit of going through the steps in COMMBUYS. We just found that large cities, right down to small towns, really appreciated the OSD employees on site working with them, because we could first explain statewide contracts in a little more detail, and then to go into COMMBUYS and seeing how statewide contracts and COMMBUYS went hand in hand. We saw the cities and towns really appreciated the individual attention.
Next, Renee O'Rourke will share insights about COMMBUYS training and what the training team did to onboard people within the new system.
OSD brought in Accenture, who is a change management consulting company. And in training, we worked closely with Alyssa and Linda, and they helped us tremendously. They helped build a bridge between the old and the new. And OSD also hosted town halls to talk about benefits, potential issues, and how to get in front of questions and hesitations the different agencies may have. And that was a big part of the rollout. Buyers were using Compass, and with COMMBUYS, this new e-procurement system had transparency, and we focused on the benefits for them. And during this time, OSD had their full-time trainers doing the regular scheduled classes, and we were contractors who were hired to train users on COMMBUYS, the new system. So we had to be trained on the old system, Compass, so we would be familiar in case users had questions comparing the two, while we were also trying to learn the new system that was being developed. Hands-on training was the focal point, especially 10 years ago. We occasionally hosted webinars and did a demo, but since we were learning a new system, it made sense at the time to have the trainings in person to offer hands-on experience. We traveled around the state using any classroom that was available to us. We had to create thousands of folders to hand out, and we packed boxes of all of our materials we would need. We trained in multiple classrooms in the greater Boston area, but we also trained in Springfield, Bridgewater, Worcester, Fall River, Westfield, the Vineyard, Worcester House of Corrections, the Bridgewater State Prison. We wanted to make it as convenient as possible for the people attending the training. And on most days, we had 2 classes a day in each of the locations. We would have 6 classes taking place in 6 different classrooms. We had purchasing, procurement, and organization administrator classes. Some challenges we encountered were different technology in each location, not sure if all the computers were going to work, if the internet would work, and getting all of our materials out to all of the different locations. Originally, there were 6 of us, 2 Pauls, Valerie, Leslie, Kim, and myself. And we had 2 supervisors, Mike and Bonnie, and our manager, Nancy. The 6 of us all shared an office, so we got to know each other and really did look out for each other. It wasn't planned, but that's how we bonded. And it was key to all of us being new and learning the new system together. We trained over 60 executive agencies. We had 900 purchasers enabled, and by the end of the second year, that grew to almost 2,000. And after that, we had to start training the 351 cities and towns.
Lastly, Chris Kennedy will share his experience implementing COMMBUYS with Periscope.
I was the head of the implementation team for the software vendor throughout the COMMBUYS project, and then maintained the responsibility for working with the OSD team throughout the life of the contract, basically to continue to grow and to continue to evolve and to meet the needs of both the Commonwealth and the local governments and the suppliers. A lot of it was building on things that were already in place, because OSD had a pretty good relationship with the suppliers, and a different relationship than like a lot of maybe other states have. They were really engaged through things like mass buys and through some of the ongoing marketing of the contracts. And so there was, I think, a lot of engagement with suppliers already. But a lot of what it took was kind of helping those suppliers adopt the new technology. So there was outreach, there were training, there were webinars to suppliers on some of the first things that we did, which was being able to post solicitations, get responses to RFPs, RFQs, RFIs, those types of things, RFRs. But then also, once contracts were awarded, working with the suppliers to get detailed price lists up, and then to get catalogs into either the marketplace or punch outs. And so there was quite a bit of interactive work with the suppliers. Some of that was on the software vendor to help with, but a lot of that was OSD had teams that were working with the suppliers. And that really, I think, made it different than a lot of just pure technology implementations where it's, if you want to do business, you're going to have to get into the system. I think that there was really a view that for OSD and for COMMBUYS to be successful, we need to make sure that the suppliers not just were complying, but saw it as a benefit to them as well. A challenge is to try and do things with all of that broad spectrum of suppliers in a way that doesn't leave any of them out. It's got to work in a way that the state's transportation department can use it just like a local library can use it. And so those are pretty complicated challenges to meet, because what you don't want is you don't want a system that works just fine for everyone. You want a system that and a process that works really well for everyone. So it's been 10 years. One of the things that I was really proud of was, and this is not just the Periscope side, this is both sides, was you look at some projects and they go on 5, 6, 7 years before you really see any results. And we had a shared focus on meeting timelines and saying, we're going to go live. And there may be things that we still need to tackle, but we've got to reach points of success so that people start seeing value, so that then we can move to the next step, as opposed to waiting for everything to fall into place in a completely neat and tidy way. And I think a lot of that is because our product was built and had served other states beforehand, but that we also approached the project saying, we know we're going to need to do some new things for the Commonwealth as well. And so it wasn't like major changes required. It was adapting to the specific ways that OSD does business. And so I think going live and being, as a former client of mine once said, aggressive but prudent was a strength of the project also.
This concludes the evolution of COMMBUYS. Thank you to Jeanette Graebner, Jackie Needham, Renee O'Rourke, and Chris Kennedy for providing their thoughts with the agency. OSD looks forward to engaging with you on our social media and YouTube channels. Links to those are in the description box. To suggest ideas for future podcasts, email the team at osdoutreach@mass.gov. This podcast was produced, audio engineered, and edited by me, Layla Palmer. Thank you for joining us.